Hello viewers, good day. Welcome to my YouTube channel. In this particular lecture, we are going to talk about inflation. We are going to anatomize the problem of inflation in a country. We'll be looking at what is inflation and what are the causes of inflation, what factors may cause or may not cause inflation, what is hyperinflation actually. As far as the definition of the inflation is concerned, inflation actually refers to the sustained increase in the general level of prices of goods and services in an economy over a period of time. The period of time basically determines that what kind of inflation you have got in your country. Is it low? Is it moderate? Is it high? It's very high, or is hyper? When this price level changes in months, you basically call it low, or that changes with a small amount. And if that happens every week or every day or every hour, like you call it very high inflation. And sometimes this inflation turns into hyperinflation. Inflation happens when your money actually loses value against the goods. When you take money, your money buys less and less number of goods. Say, for example, if the 1 unit particular of money could buy 10 units in the past, now perhaps it can buy only 5 units or 6 units or 3 units, depending on that, how quickly it is losing its value. It's losing its value because the things are becoming more and more expensive. The salary that you used to get in the past was perhaps enough to buy a lot of grocery, and do you have that was enough to buy a lot of meat, a lot of goods, a lot of things. But now perhaps the money that you actually get through your salaries are not enough to meet all those demands. So over the time, when the money loses its value, when you actually go to the market and you find that your money actually cannot buy as many units as you could buy in the past, that actually is called inflation. And this for this particular thing, basically, we have a measure of CPI. CPI actually stands for Consumer Price Index. It measures the increase or actually change in the prices of the goods and services that actually are bought by a general household. That household generally belongs to the urban areas of the country. Now, for a proper definition of CPI, the CPI actually measures the growth rate in the price of basket of goods and services that urban consumers consume. We are looking at the growth rate in the prices of those goods and services which an urban consumers buy. What do you buy as an urban consumer? You buy food, you buy clothes, you buy shelter, like say, for example, rent. So this basket actually includes a range of items such as food, housing, clothing, transportation, medical care, education that are commonly purchased by urban consumers. Every day you find your food is getting expensive, your housing is actually becoming more unaffordable. The rents that you used to pay last year or last decade actually have gone out of the market. Now the new rents are in place. The new houses are more expensive. They are actually the households, like landlords, they demand higher rents. So that actually makes your things difficult for your life. So the CPI is designed to provide a measure of the average change over time, the prices paid by urban households for a fixed basket of goods and services. The prices of these items are collected and weighed based on the frequency of purchase. Say for example, that depends on the weight of the goods that you buy, depends on that what quantity you buy of that particular good. Like say, for example, if some of the thing basically has got 20% share in your total buying, the weight actually for that will be 20%. Similarly, the things that you buy like out of 30% of your income, that basically could be the weighted as 30%. Now, what are the causes of inflation? It actually just creates problem for everyone. Everybody thinks that why is this inflation happening? The problems or the roots of the causes of the inflation are not one. There are many ways or there are many things that basically may or may not cause inflation. For some, for some of the reasons, like look at that on the slide. When the price of money, when the supply of money in an economy increases, when central bank prints more money, when your central bank is printing more money, like the central bank prints more money when the government demands from it. Sometimes when the governments borrow from the central bank has to print money. This is called deficit financing. Similarly, the central banks sometimes are asked by the government to just basically print more money to accommodate the people, and to just actually provide them with more money. And that was something similar the USA has been doing, since the early, the for end of this 2007, 2000 financial crisis. They have printed trillions of dollars, but actually they have not faced inflation of that extent because their money is not actually consumed and used in their own country. That is used, okay, that can be used anywhere in the world. But somehow the countries whose currencies basically are produced, or meant printed or used in their own countries, basically they create problem. Because when this money travels into your economy, that actually increases the demand for the goods and services. When this money goes into the pockets of the people, they spend on their local goods, or they actually convert that money into some other currencies. So when this conversion takes place, sometimes their currency loses its value against other currencies, and the demand for the goods increases. That may basically a very big cause of the inflation in so many countries. Sometimes the higher production costs can also cause the increase in the prices. Like, say, for example, if the wage rate in the country increases, or the price of the raw material increases. Generally, the example of the price of raw material could be like, say, for example, the crude oil that you import, if the price of that oil actually increases, your cost of production increases. Similarly, energy, similarly, all other kind of the raw materials, when they get expensive, like, say, for example, during the pandemic, there were so many supply chains that broke down. And due to that breaking down of the supply chains, many things got become expensive because they were not available in big quantities. Additionally, when the demand for the goods basically is more than the supply, like there's a demand supply gap, the people are able to, or the producers of a country are able to produce only, say, for example, 10 units of goods. But the people are like, the consumers are demanding 15 units of goods. So that may cause that, the price to go up. So according to these all reasons, we can classify the inflation's type in different, different categories. Like, say, for example, one of the type of the inflation is called demand pull. Demand pull. What do we mean by the demand pull? The factors that actually increase your demand, the factors that increase your demand relative to the supply. So demand pull, there are so many things basically that causes your demand to rise, but somehow that actually are not the factors that also cause the supply to increase. So the demand pull inflation occurs when there is excess demand for goods and services. And that excess demand for the goods and services comes sometimes because of the increase in money supply, sometimes because of the increase in population, because sometimes of the because of some other reasons. I'd say, for example, during these festive occasions, there are demands for so many things increase. Another reason for the inflation could be the cost push inflation. This happens when businesses face higher production costs. And this actually happens in so many countries, like, say, for example, the Pakistan and so many countries actually received floods. Turkey basically had a very big earthquake. That actually are the reasons sometimes to cause the prices of the goods and services up. That is another type of the inflation, actually, is the built-in inflation. That actually happens when the people are actually having their expectations about the rise in the prices. When everybody of us, like, say, for example, think the price is going to increase in the future, what do? We start buying more goods. And when we buy more goods, that actually increases demand. And sometimes, like that actually explodes the prices. So sometimes your expectations basically are really important. Now, what this inflation can do with you? Sometimes when this inflation is moderate, and that basically is in controllable limits, like, say, for example, if it is less than 3%, that may encourage investment and economic growth. Actually, the inflation is bad, but zero inflation is even worse. Nobody or no country basically look for zero inflation, because when the inflation goes down, unemployment goes up. Similarly, your growth prospects fade when your inflation is low. Like, say, for example, every year, your demands are increasing. New people are adding to your population. New demands are coming for the jobs. If you do not expand your money supply, you are not going to cater the demand for this extra number of jobs, extra amount of goods. And that basically you need to print money at least to meet the extra demand. But if that actually that inflation becomes moderate or from low to high, and that actually becomes a problem. So if price increase dramatically, money is no longer used actually as a medium of exchange. Like in so many countries, this is happening right now. In their own currencies are becoming worthless. Yeah, the people have got a lot of money, but when they go to buy things, they are not basically able to buy because their money is continuously losing its value. So sometimes that actually causes output to drop substantially. So there are a lot of distributional effects or the costs of unanticipated inflation. Now, debtors benefit by repaying cheaper dollars. Like, say, for example, this inflation does not affect everybody the same. Like, if, say, for example, you borrow some money from me today and you return me in the next month or the next year, now the money that you are going to return me, will be used by me to buy some things. How many of the goods, extra goods I can buy with the extra money that you actually get me back? So that basically will determine that who is the gainer and who is the loser. Sometimes when the inflation is on rise, the debtors basically have got the benefit because when they borrow money, this value is high, but when they return the money, the value of the money is low. But the creditors basically, on the other hand, have got other problem. Like say, for example, they actually, when they give the money, the value is high. When they get back them, the money, the value of the money is low. So that is what basically, like maybe the problem. So if you look at the formula of the inflation, how the inflation is calculated, as I told you, like, that inflation is actually measured by an index that is called CPI. So inflation is the percentage change in the price level of a basket of goods over a period of time. And this typically measured by the index, which is called the CPI. The CPI, the inflation through the CPI can be calculated by subtracting the previous year's CPI from the current year's CPI and dividing by the previous year's CPI and multiplying that by 100. Like, say, for example, if your current year's CPI is 110 and your previous year's CPI was 100, so your inflation is 10%. So this means that the prices have increased by 10% over a period of time. And like, between the two CPI measurements. And it means that like, your money has lost 10% of its value. The money, like say, for example, that if you could buy roughly, say, for example, something for $100, like, one period before, and now you require like, $110 to buy the same basket of goods. So this inflation can hurt everybody, like, at different levels. This inflation is needed to be controlled by the government. How does the government control that inflation? First of all, the government needs to know that what exactly is the cause of inflation. Like, say, for example, if the inflation is a demand pull, and the government is trying to control it through the cost push factors or the cost factors, that actually is a wrong policy. Similarly, like say, for example, in Pakistan, the majority of the inflation is cost push, but somehow the government is trying to control that inflation through monetary measures. Like say, for example, recently the Pakistan's government, Pakistan Central Bank, has increased the policy rate from 20% to 21%, which is very damaging for the economy. Somehow, this kind of high interest rates may be used to control inflation if it is demand pull, but somehow this inflation actually, like, per se, is not demand pull, it's a cost push. Thank you for joining us.